The key for happiness is to allow and appreciate, and regardless of who the individual is, the more an individual allows everything around them to exist and to appreciate all that is, the greater the happiness in their lives. To it's when they begin to judge and to justify that the happiness is reduced. And at that point, of course, the judgment and justification brings in fear, judgment and guilt, and the result is, of course, there's less happiness. Is it? And here we would suggest that for poor individuals to realize that poverty is oftentimes a mental perspective. It isn't, yes, we do realize that there is an economic perspective as well, but it is oftentimes supported by a mentality that they are undeserving, that they are less than, that they are incapable. And so oftentimes it creates an unwillingness within them to change the circumstances of their existence. If they but realize this psychology, this mentality, then they can shift that, and in shifting it, realize that they too are deserving of all that the society has to offer, and so, of course, they will do that which is required to get that which society offers. Having said that, however, for those who are wealthy, to realize that though you have created an abundance for yourself, that there is almost a social responsibility, not to say that there is an absolute responsibility, but that there is a social responsibility to provide, to share that which is overflowing from yourself with those around you. So if you find yourself in a situation where wealth is easy for you to create, and you have more than you could possibly use and enjoy, then why not share it with others? We know that a lot of wealthy people like to create more wealth. They see that as their, call it their necessity in life, their reason for being. And good for you, and yes, oftentimes you need wealth to create more wealth. But having said that, there is also an opportunity for you here to share the overabundance within yourself with others around you. Now, to the poor people, realize that when others share with you, that doesn't mean that they're looking to take care of you. You must yourself be willing to, as a result of that oversharing that's coming towards you, for you, as we said, to choose to enjoy the abundance of society. And that means making effort to shift the circumstances of your life. And in a more practical way, it means quite simply that you do not accept a handout, but you are willing to equate that which you received with your efforts. Put your efforts into it, and you'll find that you'll get as much, if not more. And the same, then at that point, as you get more, you'll be able to share the overabundance that you make for yourself with those around you. And same then with the wealthy people. Though you've put a great deal of effort to create wealth, you also have call it the return of that wealth back to you. That doesn't mean, however, that regardless of how much effort you put into it, that you don't have an overabundance. So be willing to share that with all that exists around you. Support the perspectives of society that allow for that which would give a leg up to those who need it. You see? Well, the key here is to realize that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is quite capable of and is more than willing to stand up for what he believes in. He's capable of doing this. Now, there is evil in the world in the sense that there are individuals who would choose differently from the rest of societies, such as ISIS, for example, things of that nature. Evil, some could see it as that. We would suggest that it is simply a different perspective. So the key here is to realize that when you want to say no to someone, you must say no with all that you are. And the resultant is then, of course, that those who interact with that would realize the limitation and the boundary that they face. So as Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Canada must be willing to say no, not in the sense of maybe just a little bit, but in the sense of all that Canada is, says no. And if he speaks on those terms and acts on those terms and expresses Canadians' involvement, Canada's involvement in society as a world society as a whole, in that way, then, dear friend, you'll find that those who would harm others will begin to face that particular boundary. And if Canada does this, then other countries will do it. And as a result of this, eventually all countries will stand up and say, no more. And so those who would harm others will find themselves ostracized, set aside, cast aside, and oftentimes dealt with by society in some very harsh way. Do you think? Again, the same perspective. Why let Canada be the only country that stands up as a whole? That the United States has oftentimes stood as the sole boundary setter for others is true, but also it has done so for economic benefits in a lot of cases, and societal benefits in other cases. When we say stand up and say no with all that you are, that is not in order to create an additional benefit to yourself. It is to say that that particular behavior, that particular psychology, belief structure, action, inaction, whatever, it is not acceptable to the society as a whole. Now, you say evil. Evil comes in many forms. In the world you live in presently, many individuals would say that ISIS is evil. Some have said that Hitler was evil, Napoleon was evil. Yet at the same time, if you look at present society, evil also is couched as the unwillingness of many countries to say no to anything. For example, right now, North Korea is being a recalcitrant child trying to assert itself on the world politics. And yet still, China does not stand up to it, and the world is not standing up to China. Everybody fears China because there is an economic benefit here of dealing with China, and China is using that economic benefit to its own advantage. But at the same time, dear friend, as we said, evil takes many forms. It doesn't have to be simply the beheading and the killing of individuals. It can be simply the economic powerhouse of some individuals. It can be said that from one perspective, the United States is evil, for in its own way, it uses its economic muscle to overpower many cultures. And in overpowering cultures, does not allow, remember as we said, allow and appreciate, does not allow and does not appreciate the cultures of other countries, and insists that other countries become more and more like they are. Yes, that the United States is a democratic country, we agree. But it is still a democracy in a very infant way, and it is still an illusion of democracy. It isn't real democracy yet. So you cannot sit there and pretend that you, as the President of the United States, or the President in waiting of the United States' successor, know better for the rest of the world. All you can do is, though you are the main, strongest country within the world presently, use your ability to allow, to appreciate, and then to set boundaries that are beneficial for the whole world, not just for yourself. You see? Think of it this way. All things, living things, have a right to existence. If you see it from that perspective, then, why would you try to harm another? Why would you try to remove another? And what that means is all living things. Now, humanity would say, well, living things is a human being, is a person. We're saying all living things, including forests, including animals, including even insects. All living things have the right to exist. They do not have the right to overpower anything else, but they have the right to their own existence. So, yes, oftentimes there is a requirement by individuals, humanity itself, to find a coexistence balance between humans and plants and animals. There has to be a certain form of coexistence. But coexistence does not mean that you overpower one over the other in order to create benefit for the one and not the other. So humanity, the law for humanity, is all about coexistence and allowance and appreciation. And so the resultant here is that human beings as a whole oftentimes see themselves as the stronger, more capable living thing on the planet, and they see themselves entitled to be able to use animals and plants to their benefits. For after all, they are not as conscious as the human beings are, so they think. And the net result is, of course, that they don't create a coexistence. They create an effort to eradicate, oftentimes, certain species, certain plants, certain animals. And so the result in here is that no one in the human race right now is following the law of humanity. Is it?